Well, I remember thinking, well, that's it. Marriage is over, and I've lost the most important person in my life to something stupid that I had done.
I just knew I can't do this anymore. I am not staying in an unhappy marriage, especially when there is no trust. I'm done.
This is marriage, WTF.
With Kenyon and Michelle.
Warning, we are not licensed professionals. However, we are experts on saving our marriage. Viewer discretion is advised. So this started with a text message that I received from Michelle when I was in Dallas at a national sales meeting for my company. I didn't text her back. I was scared. I was panicked. Felt empty, wondering how much did she know. I felt sick. I just felt like I was losing everything. I felt this was it. This was it. I'm not coming back from this one.
So when he didn't reply back, um, it kind of confirmed for me that, all right, this is over. I can finally just be done with it, move on.
In that moment, all I could think about was me and how sorry I was feeling for myself, and not even thinking about what Michelle was going through or how she was feeling. I was more than 800 miles away, and that night I drank till I passed out. I needed to talk to somebody, but I wasn't ready to call Michelle because I didn't even know how to start the conversation with her about everything. And then there was screenshots of the situation that we'll get into a little bit later, but there were screenshots of what I had done, and there was no denying it. So she had me dead to rights. And I still didn't know what to say to Michelle. I felt helpless. I did end up calling a lawyer, which was probably another mistake, just to see what would be the process if we decided to separate, because I didn't see us coming back from it. And more because I was scared. I was scared of what I had done. I was scared of who I became. I was scared that this woman who has been everything to me for 20 plus years, she wouldn't take me back. And that was the scariest thing for me. She wouldn't take me back.
So the decision to save our marriage was definitely not an easy one. I pretty much decided then when I didn't hear back from him that he knew it was over too.
Probably the bigger thing too that just made it seem like the world was caving in on me was I failed as a husband. I failed as a father, and more importantly, I failed as a man, and that's really where I was, and I didn't know how to get out of the hole.
Then we had this family to consider. We have a son who he's our oldest. We adopted him in 2013, and he was 17 years old at the time, and he would be graduating from college soon, so this wouldn't affect him as much. However, we have twin boys. They'd be graduating from high school in May of 2019, and they would be continuing on to play college basketball. Plus, we have a daughter who is currently in seventh grade, so I was being realistic. We needed to set some boundaries in order to coexist and not disrupt the lives of the kids until we were able to figure out something more permanent for us.
So I knew she deserved better than me. She's been a phenomenal partner. She's been an unbelievable mother, and she's balanced all of it and taken care of all of us here in the house. It was actually her that made the decision that we were going to take the 17-year-old in back in 2013.
Um, I had always told him throughout the years when, I would catch him in stupid little lies, if you don't want to be a husband, that's okay. You are a great dad, and I would never take that away from my kids. I mean, marriage isn't for everyone, and maybe he was just fooling himself into thinking that it was for him. But I knew I deserved more. I was done being lied to over the years. I was done being made to feel like I wasn't enough. I was working as hard as I could to make extra income for us, saving money here and there. I know a lot of moms can testify to this when I say there was no me time. We just throw so much into um, doing what our kids need that a lot of times we forget about us. Um, I'd spent enough of my life being unhappy, and I wasn't going to allow this any longer. I promised myself at the age of 18. Um, my childhood wasn't very happy, so my happiness was important to me. I worked really hard to have self confidence. Once I moved away from home and went to college, um, I was very confident in who I was when I met him. So I was very angry at myself for allowing anyone, to take that from me. I was ready to get me back.
She's super strong, but me in that moment, I wanted to avoid the hard talk. I was afraid to sit in front of her and one, own up to my lies, two, see the pain that I put on her face. And even to this day, it still hurts me to see how much I hurt her. Because like she said, there's triggers, and when things get triggered, it's just a cascade of events. And I feel so bad because I knew that I put that pain on her. I'm blessed, honestly blessed to call this woman my wife. But I know she wasn't she wasn't very quick to call me her husband. I know I didn't even deserve the title. But I love my family. Like she's pointed out, um, I always wanted to be a great dad. But the question was, did I want to be a good husband? And this was the point where I really had to look at myself and decide that. So she's brought it up before. We talked about it. I avoided it like always. When I look back on those moments, though, I realized that I didn't know what it meant to be a husband. We've said it time and time again, like we wish people would have sat us down and told us what marriage was about, the ups and downs, the highs and lows. But, after being married 20 years, it probably sounds crazy, but we understand we're learning and understanding what it means to be husband and wife, mother and father, and to be married.
We still don't really, fight. We've never had big reoccurring arguments that come back, and we're not yellers. It's hard to explain. Over the past 19 years, which we're actually coming up on our 20th anniversary this September 2019. So, for the past 19 years, we had a few issues that we had to deal with, but we dealt with them. And it seemed at the time that we learned from it and moved on. I know we're not the only ones who've had, issues in our marriage. And we'll go into this in future videos.
So up to this point, 19 years, I have failed miserably at being a husband. I thought I was doing what a husband does, but I really didn't know. I had to figure out who I was in this because in marriage, there's that old adage where you lose yourself in the marriage, but even going into it, I didn't know who I was. That may sound silly being 45 years old, and for anybody that knows me doing the things that I did, I still don't know, who I am, but I had to go back and figure out how I got to this point. It was obvious that I couldn't unravel the puzzle by myself. Michelle couldn't help me unravel that puzzle as well. So I had to make the decision to go to a counselor and seek a counselor who was going to be able to help me peel back the layers, find out what was at the core of my being, and help me understand it, and then evolve from it. So marriage aside, I needed help. I needed counseling for me.
Clearly, we were not going to be able to figure this out on our own. We found a counselor who was exactly what we needed.
So I had been to a counselor before, and Michelle knew when I went to a counselor, a female counselor, that it wasn't going to work. We'll talk about it a little bit, but there's a hero complex that has a lot of different layers. But in my life, with the women, whether they were family members or whatever, I had always been a pleaser. It started with my mom and my sister, and then it just continued on with all the women that I've been involved with, either in relationships or as friends. She knew that I would just tell the counselor whatever she wanted to hear. I would come back to the house and it's like, oh, I had a great session and this was great. And Michelle's like, okay, yeah, all right, well, that sounds good. But I know now deep down, she knew that I wasn't getting the realness that I needed from the counselor. There were so many times that I would ask the counselor, like, hey, is there anything you want to ask me? And I would end up talking for the entire hour, just not really getting a whole lot of feedback. So this time we knew, and I knew, that I needed somebody to get to the core of what was going on. And we found them. This time, if I wanted the marriage to work, I had to find somebody that's going to make me look deep inside myself, address the issues that prevented me from being the best version of myself. And turns out there were a lot. I didn't know how much deep-seated stuff I had here. And because of that, I wasn't prepared for the darkness that would come over me. But in hitting quote unquote rock bottom and being in that darkness, I was able to see the light. Our counselor asked me what probably most of you would find as a simple question. I found it very difficult. And that question was, what are you about? Who you want to be? And the scariest moment in my life happened when I closed my eyes. And typically when you close your eyes, you see something. I didn't see anything. I saw darkness. And I felt that if I didn't make a change, if I didn't figure out how to get out of this darkness, I was just going down a path that I was never going to be able to return from.
So this is all a little heavy, I know, but necessary. And we feel it's important to share. The one thing that I remember feeling at that time was, how am I ever going to be able to trust him again? He's just told me lies over the years. Just stupid lies. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to trust him again. My family of origin tends to exaggerate the truth a little bit, stretch it out, and just out and out bull stuff. And Kenyon seemed to kind of always have this attitude that, well, if Michelle doesn't know, it won't hurt her. Wrong.
I used to lie about the dumbest things. I would hide things from Michelle, or so I thought. I would lie about where I was working, when I was working, so I could go to a movie. I would buy clothes, shoes, and hide them in the car. Typically in the trunk. That was like my little spot. But she'd always find out, probably receipts or something like that. It was almost like I was trying to get caught before I got caught. But the one thing that really hurt me physically more than anything was how I would lie about the amount of alcohol that I was consuming. There'd be times where I would stop half hour from home at a convenience store, gas station, and grab a couple of those canned beers and just pound them before I got home. Almost trying to numb myself before I even got home. And it didn't matter if we had stuff going on that night. That was just the cycle that I was in. And typically what I thought is I was getting away with it. I thought that I was fooling her. But she's always had this sixth sense, or this BS radar, and she had me pegged. But once again, she was a bigger person in this. She was the better person in this. She just kind of went with the flow because in her mind it was still about the family, and she always put herself on the back burner, which shouldn't have happened, and I shouldn't have done it either. But
his actions. I knew we had a chance at saving our marriage once Kenyon began attending, number one, this men's Bible study group. When he wanted to find a male therapist, so that was the other big thing. I knew the whole female thing wasn't going to work when he tried, but I had to let him do it. He just needed a male who he could talk to, and someone that we could also see for marriage counseling. In our next video, we will be discussing what to look for when you're looking for a marriage counselor or couples counselor. So make sure you subscribe, like, and hit that bell so that you get notified when we do drop that next video, how to find the best marriage counselor. So while he was working on himself, I was working on myself. We're both in the process of putting together a video of some amazing tools and resources that have helped us each individually along the way. I'm super excited to share all of it with you.
But while Michelle was working on herself, I had to work on myself. We truly believe that we had different paths to go in self-development, but in the end, we knew that those paths would come back together when it came to our marriage. Because you can't just go to a 1-hour therapy session, whether it's once a week or once a month, and expect yourself to be fixed. It's like going to the gym and shooting once a week and thinking you're going to be a great shooter. You have to put the extra time in, and you have to be dedicated to it. So one of the things we'll be doing is just compiling a bunch of resources, books, podcasts that are going to be geared towards personal development, and more importantly, going to be geared towards men and how we have to take care of ourselves. We have to be vulnerable. We have to do a lot of different things in order to be the best versions of ourselves, to be the best man, husband, and father that we can be.
We really had to figure out if we still had the love that we needed to nourish our marriage. Sometimes when you are so hurt by the other person, it's really hard to feel if you still have that love. There is a fine line between love and hate, and I truly feel that I fluctuate on that. I was back and forth and back and forth. The main thing is that I knew I didn't need to rush to make any sort of a decision one way or another. I just really reminded myself to stay present. The only other option was anxiety, and that wasn't going to help me at all. So with time to sort everything out, I knew I still loved him, so I could check that off my list. We still had a few more items to work out, though. Love is not enough to make a marriage work.
So my shame put us in this situation, but it was my guilt that showed me and affirmed to me that I wanted our marriage to work. I know that doesn't make much sense, possibly maybe thinking those two are the same, but we definitely will speak on the impact of shame and guilt, of what shame and guilt had on our marriage.
Yeah, so to recap, the 5 reasons that we decided to save our marriage. Number 5, divorce is expensive.
Number 4, we both were willing to put in the work individually and together to save our marriage, but also to better ourselves. And we wouldn't have been put on that path without Brandon, our counselor.
Yeah, we knew we needed a professional.
Absolutely.
Number 3, both of us were committed to personal development. So working outside of that counseling session.
Yes. Number 2, we still love each other. We're still in love with each other.
Yeah.
And the number 1 reason we decided to save our marriage is...
at the end of the day, our marriage is worth the fight.
So don't forget, Marriage WTF Challenge, hashtag Appreciation Nation. Yep. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So every day, tell someone close to you how much you appreciate them. Just find one thing and tell them, that you sincerely appreciate them. For example, I told Kenyon this morning, thank you so much for cleaning my closet out the other day. I really appreciate that. And then with hashtag Appreciation Nation, comment below how it made you feel. We want to know. We want to hear what you said, what you did, what their reaction was, and how it made you feel.
So remember, subscribe, like, and share this video.
And we will see you on the next Marriage WTF.
Peace.